Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The restaurant was almost empty that evening, except for a pair of hungry twins sitting at a table by the window, their cheeks red from the cold and their eyes bright with hunger. Their small hands trembled slightly as they watched the waitress place a simple plate of pasta in front of them. Her name was Emily, a young woman with brown hair tied in a ponytail, who worked day and night to make ends meet. As Emily served the plates with a warm smile, the silence of the restaurant was broken by a deep, confident laugh. At the next table, a man in an impeccable suit watched the scene. It was James Whitmore, a billionaire known for his colossal wealth, but also for his indifference to the small tragedies of everyday life. He looked at the twins, their faces covered in sauce and crumbs, and a shudder of irritation crossed his mind. Why does this poverty still exist, he thought, before turning his eyes towards Emily. Her simple, caring gestures seemed almost heroic. Then something unexpected happened. Emily, seeing one of the boys reach for her empty water bottle, bent down and poured the last glass of water she had for herself into the child's cup. The boy smiled shyly, and his brother burst with joy at the gesture. At that precise moment, James took a step forward. He held out $100 bill to Emily, but she shook her head, embarrassed. He smiled, but not for the money. He understood that this gesture, simple, human, pure, was worth far more than any sum of money. And while Emily continued to serve the twins with patience and kindness, James Whitmore made a decision that would change the course of his life and the lives of these children forever. The rain was falling in fine drops that evening, and the icy wind rattled the windows of the small family restaurant in Brooklyn. Inside, two twins, Ethan and Logan, barely 8 years old, they trembled in their chairs. Their clothes were worn, covered in stains and mud. Their stomachs were growling with hunger, but they didn't dare ask for anything other than the simple plate of pasta that a waitress had just brought them. This waitress, Emily Parker, she was 23 years old. Her green eyes reflected both fatigue and determination. Every evening, after her studies, she came to work here to pay the rent on her small apartment. But for Emily, it wasn't just about serving food. Every smile from a hungry customer was a personal victory. As she placed the last bowl of pasta in front of the boys, a shadow fell behind her. An elegant man, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, sat down at a nearby table. He had slightly salt and pepper hair and a piercing gaze that seemed to analyze every detail of the scene. It was James Whitmore, a billionaire and business magnate, accustomed to 5-star hotels and sumptuous dinners. Poverty had never been something he encountered up close, until tonight. James watched Emily. The way she served the twins with patience and gentleness, despite their fuss and sticky sauce-covered hands, awakened a strange curiosity in him. He was used to controlling the entire world with his decisions, but here, in this small restaurant, he felt strangely powerless. Then he saw the gesture that changed him forever. One of the boys awkwardly reached for his empty bottle. Without hesitation, Emily poured some of her own drink into the child's cup. Ethan's shy smile and Logan's bright laugh warmed something in James's heart. He leaned towards Emily, handed her a $100 bill and said, "For them, and for you." Emily, surprised, shook her head gently. She had never accepted money in this way. But James Whitmore wasn't there to buy gratitude. What he had just witnessed, the pure altruism of a young waitress toward 2 starving children, awakened in him a decision he had never imagined making, to intervene in the lives of these children, and perhaps change his own in the process. That night, without knowing it, 2 completely different worlds had just met, and nothing would ever be the same again. The next morning, James Whitmore couldn't shake the image of the 2 hungry little boys and the kind-hearted waitress from his mind. In his vast office, surrounded by walls covered in diplomas and masterpieces, he felt strangely empty. Everything he owned, his wealth, his businesses, his influence, suddenly seemed insignificant compared to the simplicity and purity of what he had seen the night before. He picked up his phone and called the small restaurant. When Emily answered, her voice soft but cautious, he felt a surge of respect for this courageous young woman. "Miss Parker. I would like to meet with you today." Perhaps for coffee, to discuss a project. Emily hesitated. She had learned to distrust strangers, especially those who wore expensive suits and spoke in an authoritative tone. But something in his voice, a mixture of confidence and kindness, convinced her to accept. A few hours later, they met in a small cafe in the neighborhood. James didn't immediately speak of his wealth or his business. He spoke first of the boys, of his concern for them, and of the visible fatigue on Emily's face. "You are incredible," he finally said. "What you do for these children, few people would have that courage and patience." Emily blushed. She wasn't used to compliments, especially coming from a man of that caliber. Then James made a surprising proposal. "I want to help you. Not out of pity, but because I believe in you, and in them. If you agree, I would like to take care of their future. Feed them, educate them properly, and offer you a position to oversee this." Emily was speechless. A billionaire offering her the chance to take care of two impoverished children? It seemed unreal. Yet, seeing the sincerity in James's eyes, she knew it wasn't a scam. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, a chance to change these boys' lives, and her own. "Very well," she murmured finally, a mixture of fear and hope in her voice. "But on one condition." James raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "You must treat us like real children, not like projects or numbers in your affairs." James smiled, impressed by her strength and determination. "It's a deal." And so began an unlikely journey, a billionaire, a kind-hearted young waitress, and two boys who had never known security or stability. A journey that would change all their destinies, and teach them that true wealth isn't measured in money. A few days later, Emily drove the twins, Ethan and Logan, to the Whitmore Manor, a vast estate hidden behind high walls and perfectly manicured gardens. The boys remained silent in the back seat, their eyes wide with wonder at every passing luxury car and every twinkling light from the streetlights. When they entered the main hall, they were completely stunned. Sparkling chandeliers, polished marble floors, and paintings that seemed to tell centuries of history. Ethan looked at Logan and whispered, "We've never seen a place like this." Logan nodded, gaping, still holding Emily's hand. James Whitmore greeted them with a warm, but imposing smile. He knelt down to their level and said softly, "Welcome home. Well, this is temporarily your home. But I want you to feel at home, okay?" The boys nodded, still a little intimidated. Emily led them to their rooms, simple but comfortable, each carefully decorated with new toys and thoughtfully chosen books. For Ethan and Logan, it was a dream come true, but also a completely foreign world that stirred within them a mixture of joy and mistrust. At dinner, the table was enormous, adorned with sparkling silverware and exquisite dishes. The boys didn't know where to begin. James watched Emily gently teach them manners, her calm and patience reassuring everyone. Yet, despite the luxury and generosity, a slight unease hung in the air. The twins had never been used to receiving so much, and their survival instincts were still whispering to them to be wary. Ethan timidly asked a question. "Why, are you helping us?" James looked at them, a moment of silence filling the room. Then he replied, sincerely, "Because I've seen what the world can be like when those who suffer are ignored. And I refuse to remain a spectator. I want you to have a chance, a real chance, to grow up happy." The boys exchanged a glance, touched but still wary. Emily, sensing their hesitation, placed a comforting hand on their shoulders. "You are safe here," she whispered. "And you are loved, even if it seems strange to you." That night, Ethan and Logan fell asleep in a luxury they could never have imagined, but one question lingered in their minds: could this world of wealth and power truly accept them as they were, or would it reveal challenges they had never encountered? And in James's office, late at night, he contemplated their innocence and reflected, "Protecting these children will not be easy, but I will not back down." In the days that followed, Ethan and Logan began to discover what it truly meant to live in the world of the wealthy. The Whitmore mansion was filled with unimaginable comforts, but for the twins, every moment was both fascinating and intimidating. Emily, always by their side, taught them how to navigate this new world, how to use the delicate dishes, how to walk without tripping on the enormous carpets, and how to respond politely to the numerous and impeccably dressed employees. But despite her advice, it was clear that the contrast between their former life and this one was enormous. The first real obstacle arose the morning James organized a meeting with his colleagues. The boys followed him into the large living room, curious but nervous. The adults were talking about figures, investments, and projects, language incomprehensible to 8-year-olds. Frustrated, Ethan whispered to Logan. "I don't understand anything. Why are they talking like that?" Logan shrugged, his eyes wide open. James, noticing their confusion, placed a hand on their shoulder and said softly, "You don't need to understand everything right now. What matters is that you learn to be confident and adapt." But it wasn't that simple. The twins were regularly confronted with strict rules, precise schedules, and a discipline they had never known. Every mistake, however small, made them feel clumsy and ashamed. Ethan, who had accidentally spilled a glass of water on James's desk, felt paralyzed by the fear of disappointing him. Emily, seeing his distress, intervened. "It's nothing, Ethan. We all learn from our mistakes. James knows you're doing your best." James smiled, touched by her constant protection. "She's right, Ethan. You can fail as long as you learn and remain honest." But beyond the rules and new expectations, another obstacle arose, the pride and judgment of the other children from the upscale neighborhood who sometimes came to the mansion. They looked at the twins with curiosity, sometimes with mockery, because they had never had new toys or designer clothes. Ethan and Logan began to feel that familiar sense of inferiority, the one they had always known on the streets, but amplified by the immense wealth that now surrounded them. Emily, seeing the fear in their eyes, said to them, "It doesn't matter what others think. You are amazing boys. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." That day, the twins grasped a truth: this new world offered luxury and security, but it also presented emotional and social challenges they had never imagined. And in his office, James watched the children, aware that their adjustment would not be easy, but determined to protect them at all costs. A few weeks after their arrival at Whitmore Manor, life seemed to settle into a luxurious routine for Ethan, Logan, and Emily. But James knew that security and comfort weren't enough. The twins had to learn to face reality, even in this privileged world. One morning, while they were playing in the manor's vast garden, an accident occurred. Logan tripped near the central fountain and fell into the icy water, sliding dangerously toward the edge. Ethan shouted and ran to him, but he couldn't do anything on his own. Emily, who had been watching the scene from a few steps away, ran as fast as she could and dove into the water to grab Logan. Soaked to the bone, she managed to pull him out just in time. The twins, terrified, clung to her, crying with fear and relief. Alerted by the cries, James came running, his face etched with worry. He saw Emily carrying Logan and Ethan huddled beside them. Without a word, he helped them to their feet and wrapped them in large warm towels. In the silence that followed, Emily murmured, "You must always be vigilant, boys. Even here, danger exists, but we are here to protect you." James, his eyes shining with respect and admiration for her courage, added, "You were all incredible today. Logan, you went too far, but you were saved. Ethan, you kept your cool and helped your brother. And Emily, you risked your own safety for them." That day marked a turning point for the twins. For the first time, they realized that wealth and luxury did not make them immune to mistakes or accidents. But they also understood the importance of support, protection, and courage, embodied by Emily and James. Later, in James's office, he reflected, it will never be easy for them. This world is beautiful, but it can be cruel. I'll need more than money to protect them, and Emily is the key. And that night, the twins, snuggled in their beds, felt safer than ever, but one question persisted in their minds: would their new life truly be a refuge, or only the beginning of even greater trials? A few months had passed since Ethan and Logan's arrival at the Whitmore mansion. The boys were gradually settling into their new life, and Emily, ever devoted, made sure they never lost their bearings. But James knew that the outside world wouldn't leave them alone. One afternoon, while Ethan and Logan were playing in the garden with Emily, an unexpected visitor arrived. He was an elegant man, but his cold, calculating smile betrayed his intentions. He introduced himself as Harper, an influential investor and former associate of James. "I wanted to see these famous children you told me about, James," he said, glancing at the boys. "I must admit, they are impressive. But I wonder if you are prepared to face the consequences of your choices." Emily immediately sensed that something was wrong. The man exuded an aura of menace. She pulled the boys closer to her and stared at James, worried. James, remaining calm, replied, "Harper, you know very well that these children are not a business deal. They are my responsibility." Mr. Harper smiled, but there was a hint of menace in his eyes. "You think you can control everything, but the outside world doesn't play by your rules. One small misstep, and everything can change." This encounter put James in a difficult position. He knew Harper was looking to exploit his wealth and vulnerability, but he couldn't let the boys get caught up in this scheme. Later that evening, Emily reassured the twins. "Don't worry, I'm here, and James is watching over you. Nothing can happen to you." However, this confrontation revealed a truth that James had long known: protecting these children was not just a matter of comfort or food, but of strategy, vigilance, and courage in the face of the ambitions and dangers of the adult world. That night, the twins understood that a life of luxury also brought its own threats, and that every smile and every sense of security was fragile. But for the first time, they felt united and ready to face this strange world, with Emily and James by their side. In the following weeks, Mr. Harper's presence began to weigh heavily on the Whitmore mansion. James tried to protect the boys, but he also had to manage his business and partners, which sometimes left him frustrated and worried. One morning, Emily noticed something strange. The twins seemed nervous, whispering to each other and avoiding James's gaze. Ethan finally confessed. "Emily, last night, Harper came to talk to us after you had left. He said that if we didn't cooperate, something terrible could happen to James." Emily felt her blood run cold. She knew Harper wasn't just a curious visitor, but a man capable of manipulation and threats. She gently reassured the boys. "Don't worry, boys. You have nothing to fear as long as we stay united." However, Harper's threat became more concrete. During an important business meeting, James received an anonymous call. Compromising information was circulating about his businesses, and Harper was implying that the boys' safety could be at risk if James did not give in to her demands. James, furious but calculating, turned to Emily and the boys. "Harper thinks he can make us back down, but he's wrong. We must stay together and strong." Emily, determined, understood that their role went beyond daily protection. They now had to be vigilant and cunning. She taught the boys how to behave, how to observe and anticipate suspicious behavior, all while keeping their innocence intact. For Ethan and Logan, it was a new challenge. They had to learn to defend themselves in a world where wealth and power could turn every smile into a threat. But for the first time, they felt truly capable, with Emily and James by their side. That night, James sat in his study, reflecting and observing the starry sky. "The battles I fight are not just for my empire, but for these children, for their future. And I will not let anyone harm them." Harper's trap was set, and the twins would soon discover that even in luxury and security, danger could arise at any moment. A few days later, Harper's threat became tangible. One late afternoon, while the twins were playing in the garden with Emily, a masked stranger tried to enter the mansion under the pretext of an urgent delivery. The boys froze, immediately recognizing the danger. Without wasting a second, Emily grabbed Ethan and Logan by the hand and led them towards a side exit she knew perfectly well. Her heart was pounding, but she had to stay calm so as not to frighten the boys. "Listen to me carefully," she whispered. "You must stay behind me and not speak to anyone. Understood?" The boys nodded, trembling but obedient. Together, they crept through the garden, using secret passages that Emily had memorized. When they reached the small shed behind the property, they hid behind old chests, listening for approaching footsteps. Meanwhile, James, alerted by the security system, arrived in a rush with his team. The intruders, surprised by the speed of the intervention, were neutralized before they could reach the children. James, his face grave but relieved, hurried towards Emily and the boys. "Everything is fine now," he said softly. "You are safe." Ethan, still trembling, murmured, "Why would anyone want to hurt us?" James placed a protective hand on his shoulder. "Because we have something that some people cannot control: love, courage, and unity. And that, no one can destroy." This ordeal strengthened the bond between the twins, Emily and James. For the first time, the boys understood that wealth meant not only luxury and security, but also responsibility, vigilance, and courage in the face of danger. That evening, in the silent manner, James leaned towards Emily. "You were incredible. Without you, I don't know what I would have done." Emily smiled weakly, but her eyes reflected determination. "We are a team. And together, we will protect these children, no matter what." But somewhere in the shadows, Mr. Harper was still watching, more determined than ever to achieve his goal. And the real test for Ethan, Logan, Emily, and James was only just beginning. Weeks passed after the garden incident, but Harper didn't give up. Her anonymous messages multiplied, threatening James and, indirectly, the boys. Each letter, each anonymous call reminded James that their safety was never guaranteed. One evening, Harper took an even bolder step. He sent an ultimatum through an intermediary. If James refused to cede part of his empire to Harper, he would endanger the children. The news landed like a bombshell in the billionaire's office. Upon learning this, Emily felt a cold, protective anger surge through her. She turned to James. "We cannot give in. These children, they are counting on us." James nodded, but his face was drawn. He knew the situation was serious. For the first time, the twins, Ethan and Logan, realized the gravity of the danger. Logan, squeezing Ethan's hand, whispered, "We're going to fight, like a real team, aren't we?" Ethan nodded, his gaze determined. Together, they decided to trust Emily and James, even though the danger seemed insurmountable. That night, a plan was put into action. James mobilized his security team, and Emily prepared the children to stay hidden and calm in case of trouble. The tension was palpable. Every noise in the mansion seemed suspicious, every shadow cast by the moon ominous. Then, at midnight, Harper attempted to put his plan into action. His team tried to enter the property through a side entrance, hoping to surprise James. But thanks to the vigilance of the security team and Emily's instructions, they were immediately spotted and neutralized before any danger could befall the children. James looked at the twins, their hearts beating in unison with his own. "You were brave tonight. You did what you had to do." Ethan, wiping away his tears, murmured, "We just wanted to help you." Emily placed a hand on his shoulder and smiled. "You are braver than you think. And that courage makes us all stronger." This ordeal sealed their bond. They understood that true wealth was not money or material possessions, but the family they formed, their courage and their loyalty to one another. For Harper, however, this failure was just one step. In the shadows, he was already preparing his next attack, and the real test for Ethan, Logan, Emily, and James was far from over. Whitmore Manor was shrouded in a heavy silence. The tense days had taken their toll on everyone, but especially on James, Emily, and the twins. Harper, more cunning than ever, had devised one last scheme. He sent a fake message announcing that James had to go to his office in town immediately or the children would be in danger. Emily instinctively sensed that something was wrong. She took Ethan and Logan by the hand and said, "Stay together, no matter what happens. We'll protect each other." Realizing the deception, James decided to act cautiously but firmly. He implied he was following instructions, but discreetly mobilized his security detail to monitor Harper's every move. The tension mounted, every second seemed to last an eternity. Then came the moment of confrontation. Harper and his men were intercepted at the city entrance by James's team. The children, protected by Emily in a safe place, watched the scene from a distance, trembling but confident. Harper was finally arrested, and James could breathe a sigh of relief. Back at the manor, a feeling of victory and liberation enveloped them all. The twins realized that despite their hardships, they had survived thanks to trust, courage, and love. Ethan looked at James and said, "You're like family, truly." Logan added, smiling, "And Emily, you're our heroine." Emily, moved, took them in her arms. "No, boys. We are all heroes. Together." James smiled, finally realizing that true wealth was not measured in billions, but in indestructible human bonds, mutual trust, and courage in the face of adversity. A few weeks later, life at the manor resumed its normal course, but with a new spirit. The twins went to school, played, and learned in a safe and loving environment. Emily oversaw their education and ensured they grew up with strong values. James, now closer than ever to those he loved, found himself smiling each morning, not for his business, but for the children's laughter and the warmth of their home. With the danger past, a new era was beginning for them all, a life of security, love, and endless possibilities. And in the quiet of the manor, under the starry sky, James murmured, "True wealth, ultimately, isn't money, it's the family you choose to protect." Thus ended the most dramatic chapter of their lives, but above all, the beginning of a bright and hopeful future.